On a quiet afternoon in 1988, the banks of an artificial lake in Brazil became a nightmare site. This discovery was so disturbing that officials scrubbed it from the public record for many long years. The location was the Billings Reservoir, a massive artificial lake bordering the edge of São Paulo. There, investigators stumbled upon the body of a middle-aged man in a state that defied all logic. The body was found near Garapiranga, bearing signs of mutilation that suggested something beyond human capability. These precision incisions were so clean, they seemed to come from a high-tech laboratory experiment. Seasoned investigators, used to the worst of humanity, refused to speak of the horrors they witnessed. Every law of forensic science seemed to crumble when faced with the unnatural precision of the wounds. Why would an entire government choose to keep a single discovery silent for over 6 years? The official coroner's report would eventually reveal details that were both clinical and deeply terrifying. To understand the horror, we must look closer at the specific condition of the unidentified victim. His remains were left on the reservoir bank as if they were a discarded scientific experiment. There was no blood on the ground, despite the radical injuries inflicted upon the man's frame. Evidence pointed toward extraterrestrial experimentation, a theory that continues to haunt the region to this day. Doctors noted the victim suffered from a sudden cardiorespiratory arrest while enduring these surgical procedures. Internal examinations later confirmed that cerebral edema had occurred, likely from the extreme trauma of the event. The forensic findings suggested the man was alive, while the precision incisions were being performed. Even today, the mention of the reservoir sends chills through the global true crime and paranormal communities. We are about to delve into a case that challenges our very understanding of life and death. But first, we must examine the specific, horrifying details found within the original autopsy files. What could leave a human body in a state that seasoned investigators simply refused to describe? It began with a child's afternoon walk under the hot sun of September 29, 1988. A young boy wandered alone through the dense brush along the quiet banks of Billings Reservoir. In his small hand, he clutched a simple sling, ready to hunt for local birds. The peaceful sounds of the water were soon interrupted by the heavy flapping of dark wings. Something unusual drew his attention toward the muddy edge of the Garapiranga Reservoir's vast shoreline. There, amidst the shadows, he spotted a large group of vultures gathered in a frantic circle. The birds were focused on a large shape, lying motionless on the ground, partially hidden by grass. Seeking to clear the path, the boy placed a smooth stone into his leather catapult. With a practiced motion, he sent the projectile whistling through the air into their dark midst. As the scavengers scattered into the sky, the true horror of his discovery was finally revealed. The witness wasn't a detective, but a child looking for birds who found a nightmare instead. He didn't know then that this body would soon undergo a chillingly detailed coroner's report. Terror gripped the young boy as he realized the figure on the bank was undeniably human. Dropping his sling, he fled the reservoir to alert the authorities about the gruesome scene. Investigators arrived to find a site that suggested something far more sinister than a typical crime. They would eventually find precision incisions that baffled even the most experienced forensic medical experts. Was this a brutal, earthly crime, or evidence of terrifying extraterrestrial experimentation near the reservoir? Medical findings like cerebral edema and cardiorespiratory arrest would later hint at a truly agonizing end. He thought he was chasing away scavengers, but the vultures were just the beginning. What the police documented next would soon become one of Brazil's most terrifying forensic enigmas. When the authorities finally arrived, the sirens weren't followed by news cameras. Instead, there was a deafening silence. 2 officers from the Santo Amaro Police Department pulled their cruiser onto the dusty banks of the reservoir. A single fire truck soon joined them, its red lights reflecting off the murky waters of Billings Reservoir. The air grew heavy as the first responders approached the site where the vultures had recently circled. The response from the local authorities was immediate, yet the public reporting was strangely and chillingly non-existent. By late afternoon on that fateful day, the area surrounding the discovery was completely and strictly cordoned off. Yellow tape fluttered in the breeze, creating a barrier between the horrific site and the outside world. Security was tight as officials worked quickly to secure the scene before the sun began to set. Why would a discovery this graphic not make a single headline in the bustling city of São Paulo? This media blackout acted like a heavy shroud pulled over the entire reservoir, hiding the grim truth. That evening, September 29th, 1988, not a single mention of the find appeared on the news. Local tabloids, usually hungry for such sensational stories, remained silent, about the nightmare at Billings Reservoir. Television broadcasts flickered with standard news, ignoring the terrifying forensic enigma found only hours earlier. What were the Santo Amaro police protecting by keeping the graphic details of the body so hidden? While the site was secured with military-like precision, the flow of information was effectively and abruptly choked. This was more than a standard investigation. It felt like the beginning of a coordinated cover-up. The contrast between the flurry of official activity and the public silence was both stark and unsettling. This case didn't just go cold. It seemed as though it was being made to disappear entirely. Behind the police lines, a coroner's report would soon reveal details far more disturbing than a simple murder. The silence of the media was merely the first layer of a mystery involving extraterrestrial experimentation. For 6 years, this file didn't exist, hidden deep within a vault of official silence. Then, in 1994, the truth finally leaked, cracking the dam that held back a nightmare. The secret held until internal documents regarding the Billings Reservoir case finally reached the light. Someone risked their entire career to leak these specific, horrifying photos to the waiting press. These weren't just blurry images, but a detailed coroner's report describing an impossible crime scene. The leak was a sudden flood of information that the authorities could no longer contain. For the first time, the public saw the gruesome evidence from that 1988 September afternoon. Journalists scrambled to verify the authenticity of the paperwork that surfaced from the shadows. Inside those folders lay the true identity of the man found at the water's edge. How do you identify a man from a body left so completely and utterly unrecognizable? Forensic experts relied on dental records to finally put a name to the tragic victim. The records confirmed he was a 53-year-old man who lived a relatively humble life. This wasn't a fictional character, but a real person caught in a terrifying, otherworldly event. Before the unnatural details emerged, investigators looked into his medical history for any possible clues. They discovered he suffered from epilepsy, a condition that often left him vulnerable and disoriented. His battle with alcoholism further grounded the story in a sad and very human reality. These medical conditions made his sudden disappearance and horrific end even more tragic to contemplate. Yet, no amount of illness could explain the precision incisions found upon his mangled remains. The coroner's report noted a fatal cardiorespiratory arrest as the primary cause of his death, but the underlying cause was far more disturbing, involving a massive and unexplained cerebral edema. Every page of the leaked report pointed toward something beyond simple human or animal violence. The precision of the wounds suggested a surgical mastery far beyond the capabilities of the era. This evidence fueled growing theories of extraterrestrial experimentation taking place near the dark Garapiranga waters. The leak proved that the silence of 1988 was a deliberate attempt to hide something. Now that the man was identified, the focus shifted to the impossible nature of his injuries. Identifying the man was the easy part, but understanding his final moments proved truly impossible. The documents revealed a scene so clinical it suggested a laboratory setting in the wild. Each photograph told a story of a life interrupted by a force that remains unknown. The Billings Reservoir mystery was no longer a ghost story. It was a documented medical anomaly. As the press published the findings, the world began to look at the reservoir with dread. For 6 long years, the truth about the Billings Reservoir discovery remained locked behind heavy official doors. A thick shroud of silence covered the case while the public moved on from the 1988 tragedy. Deep within government archives, a chilling document waited for a brave soul to bring it to light. That moment finally arrived in 1994 when an anonymous source bypassed the strict walls of secrecy. A confidential coroner's report was suddenly thrust into the hands of investigators and hungry Brazilian journalists. Along with the text came graphic photographs that captured the true horror of the Garapiranga discovery. The leak changed everything, turning a forgotten police matter into a national obsession overnight. Reporters stared in disbelief at images detailing surgical precision incisions that defied any standard medical explanation. The document meticulously described how the victim suffered from a sudden and massive cerebral edema. Doctors noted that despite the horrific wounds, the ultimate cause of death was listed as cardiorespiratory arrest. Every page of the coroner's report whispered a story far more terrifying than anyone had ever imagined. The precision of the wounds suggested tools and techniques far beyond the reach of local criminal elements. Brazilian media outlets began to connect the strange findings to growing whispers of extraterrestrial experimentation. As the headlines screamed for answers, The public's dread regarding the Billings Reservoir reached a fever pitch. What was once a quiet tragedy was now a full-blown mystery challenging our understanding of reality. The leaked photographs forced everyone to look at the 1988 crime scene through a new, darker lens. No one could explain how such clinical accuracy could be achieved in the middle of a muddy wasteland. The 1994 leak acted as a catalyst, igniting a firestorm of speculation across all of South America. Journalists worked tirelessly to verify the report, realizing they held the key to a forbidden truth. Every detail within the file pointed toward a phenomenon that local authorities were desperate to keep hidden. The mention of extraterrestrial experimentation turned the Billings Reservoir case into an enduring legend of the macabre. This sudden flood of information broke the years of statement-dated silence that had suppressed the original investigation. Now, the world was finally ready to hear the secrets that the Brazilian authorities had tried to bury. When the coroner opened the long-hidden file, he didn't find simple wounds. He found surgical work. The official coroner's report from the Garaparanga region described a level of precision that defied any natural explanation. This was no animal attack at Billings Reservoir, but a series of precision incisions performed with clinical accuracy. As the examination began, the medical team realized they were looking at a masterclass in anatomical removal. The victim's eyes had been extracted from their sockets with the steady hand of a practiced surgeon. Even more disturbing was the fact that the delicate eyelids had been perfectly and cleanly cut away. What kind of predator removes facial features with the meticulous care of a specialized medical procedure? The horror deepened when investigators noted that the victim's tongue had been completely and cleanly removed. Moving further, the medical report confirmed that the left ear had been sliced off with staggering efficiency. These were not the jagged tears of a scavenger, but the smooth results of high-level surgical tools. Every cut suggested a cold, calculated intent to harvest specific parts of the human head and neck. The flesh surrounding the victim's mandibles and neck had been entirely excised with hauntingly smooth edges. Looking closer at the face, the coroners discovered that the lips were also missing, expertly sliced away. It appeared as if the subject had been prepared for a bizarre and highly advanced anatomical study. Could a human hand really move this fast and this clean in such a remote outdoor setting? Perhaps the most shocking discovery was that a significant piece of the victim's jawbone was missing. This removal of bone required tools and techniques that should have been impossible at the reservoir site. The removal of the jawbone left a void that suggested a search for something deep inside. Every missing piece of anatomy pointed toward a specific interest in the sensory organs and facial structure. These precision incisions left the medical professionals questioning if terrestrial science was even responsible for this. The removals were as clean as if performed in a sterilized, high-tech operating theater. No blood splatter or signs of a struggle accompanied these terrifyingly neat and bloodless extractions. Instead of a crime scene, the banks of the reservoir looked like the site of extraterrestrial experimentation. The coroner struggled to find words for a case where the cause of death was clinical perfection. Behind the surgical mask, the medical examiner documented internal trauma, including signs of a cerebral edema. The report ultimately linked these horrific physical traumas to the victim's final, fatal cardiorespiratory arrest. But it wasn't just what was taken from the face, it was how they reached the inside. The horrifying mutilations at Billings Reservoir did not stop with the surface layers of the skin. Investigators soon discovered chilling apertures, perfectly symmetrical holes, where solid muscle should have remained untouched. Hidden within the victim's armpits were single, circular punctures, measuring exactly 1.5 inches wide. It appeared as if the internal tissue had been vacuumed out through a narrow, clinical straw. How could someone empty a human limb of its muscle through a hole barely an inch wide? Similar apertures appeared on the arms and legs, marking where flesh and entire muscles were gone. The coroner's report noted these precision incisions with a growing sense of clinical dread and confusion. These were not the messy, jagged tears of a wild animal or a common criminal's blade. Most baffling was how the apertures on opposite sides of the body were perfectly, symmetrically aligned. Why would a killer care about such mathematical symmetry while performing such a gruesome, bloody task? Some researchers suggested these wounds pointed toward something as advanced as extraterrestrial experimentation on the body. The extraction of internal organs and muscle through such small openings defies standard forensic medical understanding. The victim's body became a map of impossible physics, stripped of its weight from the inside out. While cerebral edema and cardiorespiratory arrest were listed, they failed to explain these mechanical vacuum-like voids. The legs were especially hollowed out, leaving the skin draped over a terrifying, empty space beneath. The silent air of the Garapiranga site seemed to hold the echoes of a clinical, silent procedure. Left arm and right arm mirrored each other with a precision that felt almost calculatedly surgical. Each puncture was a clean gateway into a body that had been systematically harvested of its core. No blood splatter surrounded these holes, suggesting a level of technology far beyond the year 9. From the armpits to the calves, the biological architecture of the man was ruthlessly and efficiently dismantled. These precision incisions allowed for the removal of entire muscle groups without a single large-scale cut. In the history of the Billings Reservoir, no other discovery had ever challenged medical science so profoundly. The coroner stared at the symmetrical voids, realizing he was documenting a crime that shouldn't be possible. Every new puncture found on the limbs only deepened the mystery of how they were created. Extraction of dense tissue through such narrow diameters remains the most haunting detail of the entire file. Although the muscle was gone, the skin around these holes showed something even more impossible and haunting. Inside the body found at Billings Reservoir, the clinical horror finally reached its absolute peak. The man's chest was strangely sunken, resembling a plastic bottle with the air crushed out. His torso appeared hollowed out, as if the very life had been drained from within. Upon inspection, the coroner's report revealed a staggering list of vital organs that were simply gone. The liver and kidneys had been removed entirely, leaving nothing but dark, empty cavities behind. Both the large and small intestines were missing, stripped away with impossible, terrifying surgical precision. The stomach and pancreas had also vanished, leaving the internal landscape of the body unrecognizable. Where does a liver go when there is no large incision to remove it? This wasn't just a murder. It was a systematic harvesting of the victim's internal biological systems. The anatomical void left the medical examiners questioning every law of modern surgical science they knew. Because of these missing organs, the victim's chest had shrunk and sunken deeply inwards. His stomach also showed this same collapse, creating a haunting, skeletal silhouette on the table. How does a chest collapse so violently without a single broken rib to be found? The structural integrity of the torso had failed because the supporting internal pressure was gone. This physical shrinking suggested a force that had literally emptied the man from the inside. Shockingly, there were no standard surgical incisions found anywhere on the victim's abdominal wall. The only point of entry was a small, circular hole where the navel should have been. This tiny opening was the only path into the vast, empty cavern that was his torso. It defied logic that such massive organs could pass through such a minuscule, precise aperture. The precision incisions at this site hinted at technology far beyond standard 1988 medical capabilities. The lead coroner concluded that the organs and muscle tissues were actually sucked through the orifices. A powerful, unknown vacuum seemed to have drawn the soft tissue through that singular, small opening. This extraction method left the surrounding skin intact, while the interior was completely hollowed out. Every piece of evidence pointed toward a process that resembled a high-tech, industrial. This bizarre mechanism of death pushed the investigation into the realm of suspected extraterrestrial experimentation. Further down, the horror continued as investigators found the victim had been brutally castrated. Even the colon had been pulled out, leaving a haunting hole where the rectum was. These lower body mutilations were performed with the same bloodless, terrifying efficiency as the rest. No struggle was evident, yet the physical trauma was more extreme than any known torture. The medical report listed cerebral edema and cardiorespiratory arrest as the official causes of death, but these clinical terms failed to capture the nightmare discovered on the banks of Garapir. The final report was clear. The victim's body didn't just look empty. It was empty. This hollow shell remained as a silent witness to a crime that science could not explain. If the missing organs weren't enough, the state of the remaining tissue was even more bizarre. This wasn't just a crime. It was a biological impossibility where the body refused to decay. The coroner's report detailed precision incisions that looked more like advanced medical work than street violence. Every hole found on the body possessed a surgical quality, executed with terrifying speed and absolute precision. Investigators at Billings Reservoir struggled to reconcile these clean marks with the rough environment of the brush. Perhaps the most shocking discovery was that every drop of blood had been drained from the victim. This complete lack of fluids left the corpse looking as clean and sterile as a hollowed mannequin. How can a body be drained of every drop of blood without leaving a single trace behind? Despite the deep wounds, there was a total lack of bleeding or any signs of traditional cauterization. The edges of the cuts remained dry, defying every known law of biology and trauma response. As the hours passed in the intense Brazilian heat, the biological anomalies only became more profound. Despite the exposure to the elements, the corpse did not emit any of the usual cadaverous odors. There was no smell of rot. A fact that baffled the medical examiners at the Garapiranga site. Why was there no smell after 24 hours spent under the unforgiving heat of the sun? Even more startling was the fact that rigor mortis had not set in after a full day. Death had occurred more than 24 hours prior, yet the limbs remained eerily flexible and soft. While the cause was listed as cardiorespiratory arrest, the underlying cerebral edema pointed to something far darker. Some whispered of extraterrestrial experimentation, pointing to the cold, clinical nature of these impossible, bloodless wounds. Every piece of evidence suggested a process that happened outside the boundaries of human medical science. It was as if death itself had been paused, leaving behind a silent, sterile monument of terror. This sterile scene at Billings Reservoir presents a logical puzzle that defies every law of forensic science. To understand the sheer impossibility, we must analyze the victim's final moments before his life ended. Local records indicate he was a strong swimmer, regularly crossing 80 meters of water to reach spots. He moved through these murky waters frequently, seeking the quiet isolation that ultimately became his watery tomb. On that fateful September day, his familiar fishing routine led him directly into a waking biological nightmare. Forensic teams arrived to find his body resting on the bank, yet the environment remained strangely pristine. Despite the brutal nature of his injuries, investigators found no struggle and no other human footprints. Only the victim's own tracks marked the mud, suggesting he walked to his final resting place alone. Yet the coroner's report detailed a physical state that should have left the ground soaked in red. Every single drop of blood had been meticulously drained from his veins, leaving the vessels entirely empty. Such a massive loss of fluid usually creates a chaotic scene of violence and heavy contamination. In this case, not a single splatter of biological material touched the reservoir bank or the water. How could a human being be completely hollowed out without leaving a trace on the surrounding soil? If the draining happened elsewhere, how did the body return to the shore without leaving new tracks? The lack of contamination suggests a level of precision that transcends any known earthly medical procedure. This absence of blood transforms a gruesome discovery into a sophisticated, calculated act of clinical horror. We are forced to consider if these precision incisions were performed while the victim was still alive. The victim's heart likely suffered cardiorespiratory arrest under the weight of such an unimaginable and rapid trauma. Within the brain, cerebral edema set in, a silent witness to the extreme pressure exerted on the body. Every piece of evidence points toward a methodology far beyond the capabilities of any terrestrial predator. Investigators eventually considered extraterrestrial experimentation, a theory that explains the impossible lack of physical evidence. The silence of Garapiranga holds a secret that challenges our understanding of life, death, and physics. This vacuum of evidence creates a haunting riddle that remains unsolved decades after the initial discovery. A man swims 80 meters to fish and ends up a bloodless shell in a sterile crime scene. This logistical impossibility remains the most chilling chapter in the dark history of the Billings Reservoir. What is more terrifying than the mutilation itself? The victim was awake for every single second. The toxicology report from the Billings Reservoir investigation revealed a layer of cruelty no one expected. Chemical analyses confirmed that no anesthesia or paralyzing agents were present in the victim's system. He felt every incision, every extraction, and every agonizing probe throughout the entire procedure. There was no chemical relief to dull the sharpening edge of the tools used upon him. Despite the unimaginable agony, the coroner's report noted a detail that defies all human logic. No signs of physical restraint or struggle were found anywhere on the man's battered body. There were no rope burns, no bruised wrists, and no evidence he tried to fight back. How could a conscious man remain perfectly still while being dismantled by precision incisions? This lack of struggle suggests a level of control that surpasses our modern understanding of medicine. Moving to the head, the medical team found the victim's skull cap remained completely unimpaired. The bone was undamaged, yet the horrors had still reached deep inside the cranial cavity. Inside, investigators discovered a cerebral edema, a telltale sign of a brain under massive stress. This swelling indicates the brain was reacting to trauma that the exterior skull did not show. The official coroner's report lists the primary cause of death as acute hemorrhage in multiple traumatisms. Massive blood loss from numerous surgical wounds systematically drained the life from his failing body. But the hemorrhage was only part of the biological collapse occurring within this Garuparanga victim. A chilling component, known as calm mortis, by vagus stimulation was cited in the official findings. This refers to an overstimulation of the vagus nerve, often triggered by extreme physical shock. Such stimulation can override the body's most basic functions, leading directly to a fatal collapse. The ultimate verdict concludes that he died of cardiorespiratory arrest brought on by extreme pain. The intensity of the suffering was a physical weight that finally crushed his own heart. Can the human heart simply stop from the sheer, unadulterated magnitude of such immense agony? In this case, the biological response to pain became more lethal than the wounds themselves. This revelation transforms the mystery into a nightmare of extraterrestrial experimentation and calculated suffering. The precision was surgical, but the lack of mercy suggests a cold, alien indifference to life. He died from the sheer agony of what was being done to him in that silent darkness. The agony mentioned before leaves a physical trace within the cold pages of the coroner's report. Beyond the missing organs, the report reveals a hidden trauma locked inside the victim's cranial cavity. A condition known as cerebral edema was documented, pointing toward a terrifying reaction within the brain. This severe swelling suggests the victim's body was reacting to unimaginable levels of physiological stress. Imagine the pressure building inside the skull as the biological system fought against the precision incisions. The cerebral edema indicates the brain was literally drowning under the weight of its own trauma. In the quiet halls of the morgue, this finding confirmed the victim endured a biological nightmare. But the mystery of the Billings Reservoir body deepens with yet another chilling medical observation. The official report highlights a rare and lethal phenomenon described as death by vagus stimulation, while the spelling in the file says vagus. Medical experts recognize it as the vagus nerve. This crucial nerve acts as a superhighway, connecting the brain directly to the heart and lungs. The report suggests this nerve was overstimulated, triggering a sudden and complete cardiorespiratory arrest. It is a death caused by absolute nervous system shock, a total shutdown of the human machine. Such a reaction often occurs when the body can no longer process the intensity of its pain. Each medical term provides a clinical window into the sheer brutality of this suspected extraterrestrial experimentation. These details transform a simple autopsy into a roadmap of a truly agonizing final hour. The swelling brain and the shattered heart tell a story that words alone could never capture. Investigators were left staring at a biological puzzle that defied every standard rule of forensic science. The technical language of the report masks a level of suffering that is almost impossible to comprehend. This evidence suggests the Garapiranga victim was pushed far beyond the limits of human endurance. After discovering such a horrific scene, you would naturally expect an intensive international manhunt for the killers. Instead of justice, the public received a lie that seemed designed to protect a terrifying hidden truth. The official verdict claimed the man died of natural causes, a conclusion so blatantly false it suggests a cut. How can a body hollowed out with precision incisions be dismissed as a simple case of natural death? The official coroner's report ignored the surgical nightmare, focusing instead on internal symptoms like cerebral edema. By citing cardiorespiratory arrest, they turned a mechanical mystery into a mundane medical failure on official paper. This official report was like calling a massive volcanic eruption, nothing more than a slightly warm day. Beyond the cause of death, authorities began to misdirect the public by reporting the crime scene location incorrectly. Today, the case is frequently and incorrectly reported as having occurred at the nearby Garapiranga Reservoir. This geographical shift was no accident. It served as a primary tool to keep researchers away. In reality, the body was found at the Billings Reservoir, located several miles east of Garapiranga. This distance between the two reservoirs provided a perfect smokescreen to hide the true events. Who possesses the power to misdirect the location of a gruesome crime within official government records? By moving the crime scene on paper, they ensured that any curious investigators were looking at wrong shores. The Billings Reservoir remains the silent witness to a crime that the world was never meant to solve. Every piece of the official story seems crafted to steer eyes away from potential extraterrestrial experimentation. They traded the horrifying truth for a comfortable lie, burying the victim's agony under mountains of paperwork. This systematic erasure of facts turned a surgical mystery into a forgotten footnote in Brazilian history. While the files gathered dust, the secret of what truly happened at Billings Reservoir remained safely hidden. The official silence was a final insult to a man who suffered far beyond the limits of human endurance. For years, researchers have chased a ghost across the wrong map, led astray by official accounts. Reports frequently claimed the body was found at Apertures Reservoir, but the truth is far darker. This geographic error was not a simple mistake, but a calculated move to mislead the public. In reality, the nightmare unfolded at the Billings Reservoir, a few miles east of the Apertures. These two bodies of water look similar on a map, yet they are distinct worlds apart. By swapping names, authorities created a digital and physical smokescreen that lasted for decades. The Billings Reservoir is located a few miles to the east of the more famous Apertures. While Apertures drew the spotlight, the true crime scene remained hidden in the shadows of Billings. The coroner's report reveals details that could only have happened at the actual site of Billings. Precision incisions and signs of cerebral edema tell a story that the official location tries to hide. We must look past the Apertures deception to understand the true gravity of this clinical horror. Shielding the investigation from the public required a deliberate tactic of geographic misdirection and silence. If investigators were looking at Apertures, they were miles away from the evidence at Billings. This intentional naming confusion acted as a protective barrier around the most sensitive forensic details. Every cardiorespiratory arrest and every drop of blood points to a location they didn't want found. The myth of Apertures served its purpose, keeping the prying eyes of the world at bay. Only by identifying the Billings Reservoir can we begin to grasp the scale of this mystery. Could this geographic shell game be proof of a wider cover-up regarding extraterrestrial experimentation? The precision incisions found on the victim suggests a level of technology that defies conventional explanation. To find the truth, we must stop looking at Apertures and face the reality of Billings. If this was a brutal murder, the killer left no trace on the muddy earth. No footprints, no data tracks, and no signs of a struggle appeared in the mud. The banks of the Billings Reservoir acted as a silent witness to a physical impossibility. Investigators scoured the area around the body, searching for any sign of another human presence. They expected to find the heavy tread of boots or the marks of a vehicle. Instead, the soft ground revealed only the solitary tracks belonging to the victim himself. This lack of third-party evidence creates a paradox that defies every law of forensic science. How do you perform complex surgical incisions in a field without leaving a single footprint? The coroner's report confirms that no other individuals were present during this terrifying event. While officials pointed toward Apertures, the true mystery lay in the tracks at Billings Reservoir. The precision incisions suggest a surgical team, yet the environment tells a different story. Every step the victim took was recorded in the clay, but he was entirely alone. No drag marks suggested a body being moved, nor were there signs of a struggle. This sterile scene at the reservoir presents a logical puzzle that simply cannot be solved. Forensic experts were baffled by the pristine nature of the ground surrounding the mutilated body. If no one was there, how did the victim suffer such advanced extraterrestrial experimentation? The absence of tracks suggests that the victim was not approached by land or by foot. We are left wondering how such a sophisticated procedure occurred in such an isolated location. The earth remained undisturbed, as if the killers never touched the ground at all. It was as if the victim had been dropped from above onto the muddy bank. Despite the cerebral edema found during the autopsy, the pristine scene offered no physical clues. The cause of death was cardiorespiratory arrest, yet the missing footprints remained the greatest anomaly. To find the truth, we must retrace his final steps on that routine fishing trip. 3 days before the discovery, the man arrived at his favorite spot at Billings Reservoir. No one knew then that he was about to vanish into a mystery for 3 days. This man was a regular at the reservoir, a quiet figure known to the local landscape. He carried with him a small bottle of medication called Gale to manage his epilepsy. Living with epilepsy meant he had to be cautious, yet he never let it stop him. His routine was predictable, a peaceful escape into the nature surrounding the massive reservoir. To reach the best fishing spots, he would routinely plunge into the cold, deep water. He was an experienced swimmer, confident in his ability to navigate the reservoir's quiet currents. His goal was always the same secluded bank, located roughly 80 meters across the water. Those 80 meters of water became a bridge leading him toward a different, darker world. On that final day, he stepped into the water and simply drifted out of sight. When he didn't return, a desperate search began to find any trace of the missing man. Investigators eventually pushed through the thick brush on the opposite bank of the reservoir. Hidden deep within the woods, they found his clothes neatly placed and carefully tucked away. Finding the clothes here was strange, as they were nowhere near where his body appeared. Why would a man leave his only protection behind if he never intended to return? For 3 days, his family waited for news while he was likely enduring the unthinkable. These mundane fishing details contrast the coroner's report detailing the precision incisions found later. The Ethemita swim should have been easy, but something intervened before he reached the shore. What occurred during that brief crossing transformed a simple hobby into a scene of extraterrestrial experimentation. Before the cardiorespiratory arrest, he was just a man swimming across the quiet Garaparanga waters. Even with cerebral edema, the victim's final moments remain a haunting puzzle for every investigator. His clothes were found on one side, but his body was discovered on the other. The scavenger theory is the first thing people lean on just to stay sane. Critics often claim the wounds were simply the result of hungry, wild animals in the brush. They suggest that nature took its course on the abandoned banks of the Billings Reservoir, but the animals themselves tell a different story than the one found in early rumors. When the body was discovered, vultures were seen gathered around the remains in a dark circle. Yet, despite their proximity, there were no signs that these scavengers had actually fed. Not a single piece of flesh or entrail had been touched by the waiting birds. If the body was covered in vultures, why was there not a single bite mark? The coroner's report explicitly mentions the absence of any telltale signs of predation. Specifically, there were no marks from the carrion birds that are common to this region. These opportunistic hunters usually strip a carcass to the bone within a matter of hours. Here, they treated the body like it was made of cold glass instead of fresh flesh. They ignored the open wounds and exposed internal cavities that should have been a feast. It is as if the local wildlife recognized something inherently wrong with this specific specimen. The biological impossibility of their restraint adds a layer of dread to the investigation. Animal behavior is predictable, yet in this case, nature's most basic instincts were suppressed. The precision incisions remained clean, untouched by the jagged beaks of the scavengers. This was not a buffet for the wild. It was something far more clinical. Skeptics must face the fact that this was not predation, but potential extraterrestrial experimentation. Even the vultures knew this wasn't food. They knew it was something else entirely. The scavengers stood as silent witnesses to a scene they refused to participate in. We are left with a set of facts that conventional science simply cannot explain. When you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however terrifying, must be the truth. So, what is left after we discard the theories of wild animals and mundane murderers? The coroner's report describes incisions and holes executed with a haunting, surgical quality. These precision incisions at Billings Reservoir were not the work of a panicked, clumsy killer. Instead, they suggest a speed and absolute accuracy that defies any known human surgical tool. Every cut was intentional, focused, and performed with a frightening level of technical mastery. This clinical precision occurred while the victim's body was still fighting for its very life. The autopsy reveals he ultimately died of cardiorespiratory arrest, brought on by unbearable, extreme pain. Imagine a procedure so invasive yet so precise that the heart stops from sheer agony. This was not a murder. It was a systematic harvesting conducted on a living subject. The Garapiranga discovery has become the Rosetta Stone of these dark, unexplained mutilation cases. It provides a blueprint for a modus operandi that exists far beyond our current understanding. Is this the signature of a technology we have not yet even begun to comprehend? The surgical holes suggest a method of extraction that leaves the surrounding tissue perfectly intact. No blood was spilled on the ground, and no footprints led away from the scene. How many other cases are hidden in files that have not been leaked yet? Chilling details like cerebral edema point toward a physiological reaction to profound, localized trauma. Every piece of evidence points away from the terrestrial and toward the truly alien. Perhaps the truth of extraterrestrial experimentation is closer than we are willing to admit. For now, the files of the Billings Reservoir remain a testament to the impossible. The Billings Reservoir case remains a warning of what might be happening in the shadows.